Hi, I'm Tony from ZEISS with today's Lens Close-Up. We're talking about the Batis 135mm f2.8 lens for the Sony Alpha series cameras. This is a fantastic and lightweight telephoto lens, great for portrait work, distance photography, as well as landscape photography, and has an OLED display on top of the lens which gives you a distance readout as well as depth of field markings. And for you hybrid shooters out there, it's great for video work as well. It has its own image stabilization, which works in concert with the Sony image stabilization as well. Great for handheld capture as well as giving you a shallow depth of field. Thanks for listening. I'm Tony from ZEISS with today's Lens Close-Up.
This is ZEISS Presents Full Exposure, the weekly resource for news, trends, and the people who influence the world of photography and cinematography. Hosted by veteran photographer and filmmaker Jim Kamp.
On episode 35, we speak with James Cawley, a director-cinematographer from Utah specializing in outdoor recreation and tourism films. Working with small crews, he traverses the state and remote locations around the world, working to develop a lean style of producing, while keeping cinematic production values in locales and with budgets that typically only support documentary-style productions. But first, we'll take a look at Native Son, a film project James shot for ZEISS telling the story of Navajo boxer CONCHO SASH.
CONCHO SASH and Xiao without the Ninchle. Exil ben a shadow. In it Nilini ben a shadow. Not the dark gate na shadow. He's a beina. Yeah. I should say, be long for this. Bishop Bay, Gahinstko. Eben Nachanasko, Cholos, Dobesh at Zil. The Dehuns zen. Na Shadesh at Behozen. Do the Sharko. Sits East Betzil go innocent. Doschen Sikis. Doshikis Belago and Steda, Ben Yeda. The Denayat Ehin Schlin. Do Ben Ye. Da Niet A and Stra. But you hast here, Missin. Nasta Day Bashed. When it nay.
James, thank you very much for joining us today. It was really a very nice opener. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got onto the idea for that particular project that we just saw, that very moving project?
Yeah, for Native Son, I was asked by ZEISS to create an educational project to support the CP3 lenses. And I wanted to come up with a concept that would showcase that from educational side, but to also create a vignette that was interesting, engaging, and have a cinematic value that I could really kind of push the lenses to. So with the project, I have known the main actor for several years. I've worked with him probably about 5-10 years ago on a different project, and on the locations, there's a lot of diversity in Utah, a lot of diverse locations, and so we wanted to showcase the locations that really fit the mood and the feel. So for the boxing gym shots, for instance, we found a gym that's downtown Salt Lake City and worked with them to film. It actually had no power in the gym, which made it quite interesting to bring in our own generators and light those scenes and get everything kind of up and going. It was probably about 50 degrees in the gym as well. And as far as like the culture and the research and everything, I leaned pretty heavily on our main talent to explain to me his background and his influence and his journey as he's tied into his ancestral ways, and to kind of learn more about that as we went. I personally work a lot with a lot of archaeology things with the state, a lot of heritage projects with the state. And so in working with those projects, I've learned about quite a bit of it over the last couple years. And so it kind of tied in, helped me tell that story a little bit better, and to kind of help tell the story overall in a unique and interesting way that wasn't just an educational piece. From a visual angle, I set out to do this entire shoot with the CP3 lenses because, number one, they're lightweight. They have a very good velvety look to them that really told the story well, straight out of camera. And we could do things like handheld the camera. And again, when I say we could do things, the whole project was done with me and one of my assistants. So lighting to rigging to dolly movement, everything that you see was set up.
Wow, really?
With
two people, huh?
Two guys, yeah,
wow.
On location. So I did all the directing and shooting, editing, sound, and the behind-the-scenes video that you'll see coming out through ZEISS was all shot by him. And so we would go into, say, the location there at the boxing gym, have to set up generators, run cords, set up backlights, get the monitors set up, get everything kind of in place. So overall, the CP3s really helped out just because of the style, the visual impact that the lenses made, and doing a lot of handheld things and doing a lot of pulling focus by hand. It was very easy to stick on the red cinema camera that we were using and just kind of be able to control everything right from there.
That's amazing. You're pulling your own focus?
Yeah, absolutely. I always pull my own focus.
That's great. But I mean, just think about that. It does not look like a two-person crew. I mean, it looks like you certainly had a few hands in it. So it's kind of surprising to hear that. Yeah, it looks really good. So is there a future for this project? Because it seems like you kind of come away wanting to know more.
Yeah, initially it was a project that needed a vignette to support the education. But as I dug deeper and as I met with more people and as we kind of took a look at where it could go, there's definitely a road for this in the future as either a short or a feature-length documentary following his fighting and where he's progressing in his career.
Are you still in touch with him as far as following his fight career and so forth? And
I am. Yeah, I talked with him on Facebook last night. So.
Yeah. Are you shooting any of his bouts or anything?
Not currently, and he's still in the training phase, and he's into mixed martial arts, and so I think he's kind of deciding which direction he wants to really push it and take it. And so hopefully we can kind of track his career as he grows and see if there's an opportunity to jump in and take this to, either a complete short or a documentary feature.
That would be cool. So when we were talking before we came on, and you were discussing a little about your backcountry work, your tourism work, your work is really beautiful, and I was just really stunned by the fact that you haul in all the stuff yourself. It's basically you and another person shooting all this stuff with dollies, with stabilization mounts and all that stuff. Give us a little bit of a background as to how you got into this. I mean, I think there's probably a lot of people out there. I know somebody just right off the top of my head who would just love to do this kind of work. So how did you actually find yourself getting into this? Obviously, you're from the Southwest, but what was sort of your track to get into tourism filmmaking?
Absolutely. So to get started in kind of my story of getting into tourism filmmaking, I started a company called Center Star years ago that was a video production company. And as I grew that company, I started to do the traditional jobs everybody would do, the recording meetings and events and doing commercials and doing all the general stuff. And as I moved on, I realized the more I followed my passion, the more I followed what I like to do, which was be in the outdoors, experience the outdoors, tell others about the outdoors, and seeing that experience shared, I really focused on creating a niche to really just get into what I want to do and do it well. And so I started to just focus on those clients. And as I started to do that, I saw my business growing. So currently, Center Star is doing work for Visit Salt Lake, which is an organization to promote tourism for Salt Lake area. We do almost all the video content for the Utah State Park System. And so really getting in and proving that we know how to do those things and complete that work at the highest quality level is really what's grown it into something more than a dream. It's being able to shoot water skiers off of a boat and knowing exactly what lens and system you need, and to be able to do that with one person and come away with what you need to do, or go into the desert and complete something in 3 nights without a hotel room or any power, and figure out how to haul in your own power or enough battery power, and what cameras are going to be able to compete in that environment. And that's really where, over the last couple of years, we've set ourselves apart as a company, is that we get in there, we love it, we live it. We're not just creating an end piece for someone. We're creating something that actually means something, that has a facilitating result, and it sells the feeling that they're trying to sell.
Well, it's really interesting that, again, that you're talking about doing so much of it solo or very small crew. You know, maybe 2, I think you said maybe 3 people at the most. Do you approach it by saying, maybe I can do this myself, and here's why? And how do you sort of get to that point where you say, let's say for the Kamp project that we're seeing, how do you approach that, saying, here's what I need for this project, here are the locations? Walk us through that a little bit, because I think that would be insightful for emerging filmmakers who want to get out there and do this kind of work, that love the outdoors and want to explore and shoot in a very pared down way. Absolutely.
So when going into a new project, and somewhere, the Kamp project that we'll view here in a minute is a good example of that. You need to look at what are your restrictions, what are you trying to sell, what are you trying to accomplish, how are you going to translate that into a visual form that's actually going to do something. So often I'll start out by looking at what is the area remotely from the internet, looking at Instagram, looking at Facebook, looking at current and past tourism projects, and finding what are the sell points there, what are everybody going to these areas to do. And then from that point, it's finding out, how do we tell that story, whether it's a guy riding on a horse through a slot canyon, an aerial of an amazing place. And once you identify all those key factors, you can start building around that. And that makes it a lot easier. Instead of just showing up with a crew of 10 people, you can show up with a crew of 2 people and really accomplish and use the scalpel approach instead of using the meat hammer approach, and take it on and really be effective with what you're doing. And that really resolves down into what cameras and what lenses and what stabilizer, and how much battery power am I going to need? Am I going to be sleeping out on the rocks? Am I going to have any access to transfer cards? And so you really have to plan 2 steps ahead. And the more people you get into the mix there, the more complicated it gets. And that's not to say that I wouldn't in the future use other people or grow into other things. As we grow, we will need other people. We'll need other filmmakers to step up and have that passion for what we're doing. And I think that's what it really comes down to, the passion and the preparation and having the visual impact in your head before you go out and shoot it. Storyboarding, I always start out with a shot list. Storyboards are great, but a lot of the time when I show up in these locations, you can't control 90% of what happens. So having a good idea of what shot you need to tell this part of the story or sell the emotion of the certain place or scene is good to have. And storyboarding out as much as possible is great, but definitely just having a general idea and really trying to execute that for a purpose is where it comes down to. And working with talent is one of the unique things that we do, is we work with people who are real. We will work with locals who ride horses. We'll work with the guy who his life is water skiing. or the person who goes backpacking and hiking every weekend. Those are the people who will translate the visual message better because they are living it, they're feeling it. If we have somebody hiking through a slot canyon and they're feeling that feeling that you'll get when you hike through the slot canyon, then that'll translate. That's something that can't easily be acted out, and that's something that I've learned over the years is, you let an actor in traditional cinema get into their character and feel the emotion. We do the same thing with people who are actually into those areas of interest, and as you can see in a lot of shots, you can feel that. You can feel the feeling of them experiencing the location.
Well, it's very alluring. It definitely makes you want to go out there. So I think you're definitely nailing it. What's coming up next for you, project-wise?
Wow, we have for our next projects, we have a lot on the table. We're working with Utah State Parks quite a bit more over the next year. We have a contract with Visit Salt Lake to tell the story of the Salt Lake Valley and the area of Salt Lake itself, and the neighborhoods and the canyons and the resorts and the things associated with that. We have a couple personal projects, different things in the stock realm. Mm-hmm. And of course, just the traditional client projects that pop up quite a bit. And it's a busy year. It's been a good year.
What do you say what would be your advice to say to somebody starting out who would love to do what you're doing? What have you learned along the way? What kind of advice that you would give to somebody who would say, gee, I'd like to move out there and start to do this, or lives there already and would like to pick this up as a fun career, because it sure does look fun?
I would say if you're interested in doing something along the lines of what I'm currently doing now, is to go out there and do it, and do as much of it as you can. Shoot it, but have purpose for it. You see a lot of people trying to make careers, and they do make careers doing Instagram and doing YouTube, and that's amazing, and I think a lot of people are very successful at that. But a lot of people have a hard time translating that into the traditional business realm of the industry. And I think the key to that is thinking about this like a business, going out and shooting things with purpose to learn it, to translate it into something that's you're going to get hired for, something that people are going to look at your skill set and understand that it's different, or there's something engaging about it, to understand it and then specialize in it, and just work your hardest to keep learning every day and becoming better at it.
Well, I think you said something in part of your description of your projects was, how you go out to a place and you soak it up first. And I think that's kind of key for not just what you do, but for a lot of documentary type work, is not just showing up and thinking you're going to get it right away, but absorbing the atmosphere and so forth. I can't think of better locations than where you go to hang around and soak it up some. But that sounded like pretty cool advice.
Absolutely, and that's one thing that has become kind of a mantra for Center Star, is to go to a location and spend as much time just soaking in the vibe, or the energy, the direction, because every place has its own vibe. When we went out to Kamp, and you go out in the middle of the desert, and all you hear is owls and crickets and frogs, and you have to kind of figure out, how am I going to translate this visually and tell somebody else about this? And when you come to New York for the first time I came to Manhattan, it's overwhelming, and you can feel the energy, and you know how you want to capture that and translate that to your friend that's never been there. But when you're there for a while, you start to understand the intricacies of it and how to better tell that story to a broader audience, and what may not be as important and what is very important. And so it really is about putting yourself in a place and just getting to know your subject matter.
Well, next time I'm out there, I'd like to be on your crew, because it looks like so much fun.
Jim, you're always welcome. Absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming in. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in. Join us next time for another edition of ZEISS Full Exposure. If you can't watch, you can always catch the audio-only version on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Follow us on Instagram at ZEISS_full exposure or on the web at ZEISSfullexposure.com. And to learn more about the latest in ZEISS lenses, head to ZEISS.com.